Hey everyone, welcome back to the Walk to Wealth podcast. If you're tuning in on YouTube or any of the podcast directories, make sure to do yourself one teeny tiny little favor and make sure to give us a follow because I don't want you to miss out on any of the amazing guests I got coming on this year. Without further ado, the lady I have on today, I actually got to meet her at a speaker school mastermind. For the OGs listening to the podcast, my good friend Brandon, he also has speaking masterminds throughout the country, and I got to meet her at the one that was back in October of last year and New York and Stanford. And she also just so happens to be one of my AI clients that I'm working with one on one. They're in the same mastermind. So it was super dope getting to talk to her and her mom. And then realizing that they're also know the person that I work with, and they're all live like bunch of states away. So it's crazy how small the world is in entrepreneurship. So without further ado, Celeste, for anyone who hasn't had the opportunity to get to know you, to get to meet you yet, tell us your elevator pitch. Who are you and what do you do?
Yeah, thanks for having me. My name is Celeste Moore, and I'm a certified image consultant. And basically, I help people discover and master their own unique style so that they can command presence in any room that they walk in, any stage. Yeah.
Amazing. So, before we get into all the amazing stuff that you got going on right now, take us back in the time machine a little bit. What was little Celeste like growing up? Especially with it,
Ooh.
I mean, I got to interview your mom. I don't know if you know, a couple weeks ago or like about a month ago. So I got to hear her upbringing and her story. But you being her daughter, what was the the life like from your perspective?
So I'm the oldest of five from my parents. And so little Celeste was always responsible at a young age. So yeah, I basically, was the second mom, if you will, while my parents struggled and went through their adversities and were nurses and worked at night and, just trying to make ends meet and feed a family of seven. Yeah, and lived through a divorce and yeah, kind of life was definitely, we never felt like we didn't have, but we definitely were. Or from my parents' perspective, we're struggling quite a little bit, to make
Yeah,
ends
yeah.
meet.
No way. So fast forward us a little bit. So um, you're in like image consulting, right? And
Hmm.
so I'm curious. So this is the part of me like I like really getting into like what makes people tick. Did
Hmm.
that stem from like your self image in your upbringing, or is that something that came on later on?
Yeah, it's interesting because I had a lot of hand me downs growing up. And I don't know, I still thought that was cool. I'd go through and find different pieces and create my own look. I just didn't
Mm.
know at the time. But I remember being 12 when we moved to a really influential part of the country called Boca Raton, Florida. My parents, I had no idea that everybody had a BMW and a Mercedes. And to me, that was people that had money. So I used to go to the mall a lot when I was 12, like most 12-year-olds do. And this mall specifically is very high end. And I
Mm.
would just go to stores and I would pick out a pair of jeans I remember. And they were just like, at the time in 1988, that dates me a lot, but these these jeans were $70. And my mom was like, oh no, if you want to do anything, you need to babysit, you need to work, whatever, and get them yourself. And I did. But for me, I think then what I noticed back then was trying to define myself, trying to figure out who I was in the middle of a very, rich neighborhood, if you will, not having rich parents and maybe just trying to fit in. Um,
Hmm.
and so I think I was just trying to form an identity like most teenagers.
Yeah, trying to figure yourself out. Yeah, I don't know
Yeah.
what it is about that like teenage, middle school years. Like something about just going to the mall is super fun. I don't know. I used to go to the mall and just do a whole lot of nothing. Just go into
Yeah.
stores and not buy anything, and then walk out with it'll be like five, six, seven of us just going to the mall. And like I go to the mall now, and it's like I get what I want, and I leave. Like I'm not there
Yeah.
for any any second longer. I just get my stuff and I go. But
Yeah.
you mentioned you started babysitting. So like
Mhm.
that was like kind of like your first entrepreneurial endeavor?
Oh yeah. I started when I was 11. Like what
No
11-year
way.
old is trusted to watch kids? But I guess it was like while their parents were just having a dinner date and they were sleeping. But yeah, I
Yeah.
hustled. I mean, I if I wanted anything extra, my parents could afford. It was like at Christmas time or a birthday, we'd get, or before school, we'd get a couple pieces of clothing that were new.
Yeah.
Everything else was like, no, you got to fend for yourself. So that was
Yeah.
kind of the beginning of me being like, okay, if I want something, I'm going to go get it.
Yeah. So then fast forward us a little bit, then you get into high school. Did you
Mhm.
start to get that identity to kind of figure out yourself out a bit more once you got into high school? Did you keep the entrepreneurial spirit alive in high school?
Mhm.
What was it like there?
High school is just, I just worked a bunch of different jobs, Subway, Little Caesars, just like whatever, just so that I could have some pocket money,
Hmm.
pay for my car, my gas, it was nothing crazy. Um, I really didn't until I was in my early 20s really start that entrepreneur like journey. It was
Hmm.
after I had worked on my own a little bit and made a lot of money, and I was like, ooh, my eyes just kind of opened up, and I was like, the possibility is endless. And
Yeah.
so I started looking at all different careers, jobs. Like I got certified as a matchmaker, went to New York and trained. Then I was like, okay, I'm a little bit young to like be matching people. I just didn't have
Yeah.
that data of people. So then I'm like, okay, then it was like looking at all the things that I love to do. So it was this image consulting. So I went and trained in New York, got certified with that. And I came back and I still was really green because I still didn't know anything about running a business. Like
Hmm.
the difference in an entrepreneur is like you've got to know all the things in business. Where
Yeah.
if you're good at something, that's just really a trade.
Yeah. So let's talk to us a little bit. So how long was that like I guess soul searching period, I guess you could say, where you're trying different
Mm,
things out? Was it like 2 weeks or a couple months, or like was it like 2 years or like, because I know for me personally, right, I dropped out of college 2021 to get into real estate. And I lied, I dropped, yeah, 2021. I got licensed 6 months after I dropped. And then real estate led to social media, led to agency, led to podcasting, led to AI. But like
mm-hmm,
I say that quickly, but that was like almost 3 years of my life right there, where I was just like trying stuff out, trying to figure things out, going after the next opportunity, and like
yeah.
that. And sometimes when I share my story, like it gets condensed down, but for me, that was like a big chunk of my life. So, like, how long did it take for you to stumble across image consulting?
Mm. Okay, well, it took me many years to get where I'm at today. It did
Oh,
not
of course,
happen
of course.
overnight. It was
Yeah.
like trial and error, what worked, what didn't. After college, I graduated in 2003, and the goal was to go to law school. I was a poli sci international studies major, and I got out and I was like, oh, I don't like started studying for the LSATs. I was like, no, this is not me. I don't want to spend another 3 years of my life barely surviving and then not liking the job when I get out. So
Yeah.
that's when I started looking at all the things. And I really did land on, so that was like a couple years later that I became an image consultant. 2000, I think 2006, I was certified.
Yeah.
But like that wasn't the whole end of and the beginning of my journey. See, I struggled, like I said, I struggled with being a business owner. I also just had a daughter. So all like
Mm.
on my own. So her dad did not and was not around the whole entire time. So that was like a tough balance of trying to go full blown entrepreneur and then also raising my daughter because I wanted to be around for her. That was really important to me. And
Yeah.
so I had ebbs and flows of like, okay, I started a skincare company that was like on the side just so I could have, more income coming in. And I was like, I was really into nutrition and fitness. I was like, maybe I'll just get my nutrition, maybe I'll do, I just like nothing was really crystal clear for me until about 2021, actually.
No way. Wow.
Yes. So then I became a date coach because I was like, ooh, my matchmaking from back in the day, my image consulting, let me help guys before they go into the dating world, like look good, how to present themselves, how to date better. And that was like going uphill, like this like, oh, this didn't work. And I just had to kill her. So this year she died
Yeah.
and I refocused myself into this new program of image consulting. And this is where things just really started to move forward for me. So
Yeah.
it's
It's
not always linear.
100%. It's crazy how like all your like earlier experiences kind of like help prepped you without you realizing it for like what you got going on nowadays. So I guess to kind of dive deep a little bit into like 2021 a little bit. That said, you went
Mhm.
all in on starting to grow the dating coaching business. And then now this year you had to kind of like put it down. You said, I heard this one saying. I forget. I think it was Kevin O'Leary. I forget. I don't want to misquote him. It was
Hmm.
someone, a big entrepreneur, and they were talking about like how sometimes you have to take the dog behind the shed and put him down, and
Oh
like
yeah.
it's never easy to do, but sometimes in order to grow, we have to do it. So like, what was that like? Because I know as like an entrepreneur, as a visionary, as a creative, like we put so much time, energy, and effort into building what we're building, into building these businesses and these products and services, and then I mean, you're in a service based business, so it's like you get to talk to these people, and now it's like now you're building these connections with all these different people that you're helping out and all this different stuff. So it's like there's so much going on. So what was it like navigating that process of like taking that idea and like putting it down, putting it away? Like what was going through your
Hmm.
mind? Like what led up to it?
Yeah. So it was 2.5 years of date coaching and also a different podcast that I had. And it was all around dating, relationships, and not one ROI.
Wow.
Not one. And I'm going to be like 100% transparent here, which is a little hard to say out loud. And I had to look at myself and what I was doing. And it wasn't because I wasn't good. And it wasn't because I wasn't getting amazing guests. If I really looked at it, it was because that wasn't where my true passion and purpose lied.
Hmm.
And you have to get real and honest. And sometimes honesty sucks. And so, literally, what I had to do is close 120 episodes of my podcast,
Wow.
which was probably the
Jeez.
hardest. And then the second was I had to, in a very literal sense, kill the bitch. It had to be very dramatic.
Yeah.
Because if I did this kind of like, oh, a little bit, I had clients as soon as I said I'm no longer date coaching, want to become my client. And I had to say, you know what? This didn't feel right for a reason. Something wasn't working out for a reason. And when I dialed back into my true purpose and passion and what I do, what I've always done, but what I do now with even more rigor for speakers and entrepreneurs, my life literally went downhill, like where I wasn't struggling. I wasn't trying so hard because things literally came naturally.
Yeah, and that's so amazing. I had like a similar moment. So like for me, I said so I got licensed as a real estate agent. My original goal was to get into investing. That
Hmm.
didn't work out. An attorney gave me some bad information. Long story short, I was like, all right, can't do that. Then I pursued my license, got licensed, and I was like, all right, now I'm gonna become a top realtor, use all this money to sell houses, and then get that money to get back into investing, right?
Hmm.
And then after about a year, I ended up putting that away, starting the agency, and then after the agency, that didn't work out as well. And so I was at this point, and then at this time, this is the between like October to December of 2022. At that time, right, I started the agency, that failed. My podcast numbers were going down. I just stopped focusing on real estate, and my restaurant job, we're entering winter season, so it was about to start getting slow. And so like everything was going downhill for me, and I ended up finding this. I don't know what led up to it. I started looking up videos on YouTube about purpose or something like that, and I stumbled across this concept called ikigai. And
Hmm.
for anyone listening, it's a Japanese concept, right? It just stands for like your reason for being, your purpose, right? And like it's the intersection of like what you love to do mixed with what the world needs, mixed with what you can be rewarded for, mixed with what you're good at, right? And when those four things intersect, that is your quote unquote ikigai. And so I had this period where I was like, back to what you were saying about like passion, your purpose is not in something. I was like, well, what are all the fingers pointing back to? What do I enjoy the most? What do I love the most? And at the time, um, it was like podcasting. And so I decided to go all in on that. And that ended up leading to me meeting my mentor who had a course on how to use ChatGPT. And then I used that course. And in his course, he used ChatGPT to create the course. So I did something similar. I used ChatGPT to create my webinar on how to use ChatGPT. And then that kind of like
Genius.
kicked the whole AI thing off. But it was as I said, similar to you, it was tough, right? Because at
Hmm.
that time, especially being a young entrepreneur, you get all these more seasoned folks like, "Oh, John, if only I was your age. Oh, John, like if I started when back in your day, if I would be a millionaire right now. John, you're doing so great." And like nothing externally or internally reflects that, right? Like my bank account doesn't reflect that. The real estate, the businesses, nothing reflected. But all these people say, "Hey, John, you're so great." And so like it was tough because I feel like I was supposed to be much further ahead
Hmm.
based off what all these people were telling me that I know how good I'm doing, but it's like, and it ended up leading me to, I said, get into AI, which led into what I got going on now. But I don't know where I was going that.
Yeah. No, it's
Random.
okay. Like
Ten.
you're talking about, you should be further along or you
Yeah.
should be like with where you're at, but you spoke like what you just said there is really true because as a young entrepreneur, I can imagine, I mean, I wasn't able to really focus like I could have then because of,
Mm,
Madeline being born, but
yeah.
I think yes, you are where a lot of young entrepreneurs my age wanted to be in your shoes. But
Yeah.
at the same time, you also looked at it as like, I'm young. I should know what I want. I should be here already. And
Yeah.
at least you're wise enough to have done the self reflection, and we're
Yeah.
able to like, you know what, it's not working for a reason.
Yeah. And so like for me, I think a lot of my success has just been my willingness to like pivot.
Mm.
Now sometimes having shiny object syndrome, that's a whole nother problem, right? But like that's a whole nother conversation, right?
Yeah.
But like sometimes when something isn't working out and it's like, all right, I just like am quick to jump to things, right? And that kind of led me into where I'm at today. But kind of bring it back to what you were mentioning too about like um where your true purpose and your passion lies. Like, so what kind of like reflection? I said for me, it was just finding videos on Ikigai, and I'm just like, I watched every video on YouTube on Ikigai, and I was like, dope. Like, all right, and then that's what kind of sparked the whole like self reflection journey for me.
Hmm.
But for you, what led to the self image? Like, what things like led to that?
Well, I'm going to be 100% transparent. There
Mm-hmm.
is part of my job when I was 21, putting my way through college, I was a dancer at an adult strip club.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what put me through school. And honestly, this point in my life, I was young, vulnerable, naive, but it also ate away at my sense of self worth. It ate away at
Mm,
so much of my self esteem, if you will. And it took a long time for me to repair that. And it's so weird. I used to take off my clothes for money, and now I actually dress up people for
for
money.
money. You're on the opposite.
I'm the opposite. And I just like correlate. Actually, Brandon correlated that with me doing my speech. But I think for me, it was like I wanted to do something that not only was I passionate about, but that people, uh, how do I say it? Where people looked at me for my brain and not for my body.
Mm-hmm.
And as a woman, I put myself in this position for a long time where I just felt that I'm done. Like I want to be taken seriously. I want to be taken not because I'm a shiny object. I want to be
Yeah.
taken for actually what I have to offer people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The value you provide.
Hmm.
That's
Yeah.
so dope. That's so dope. I think when it comes to like being an entrepreneur, you already have so much pressure, and then you add on all the other complexities on
Mm.
top of that. As I said, being a single mom, being a woman, it's like there's so much. And I remember for me, I had the worst relationship with my mom growing up, and we still have a pretty bad relationship. But it's like as I get older, it's like I mean, you start to appreciate more, and then we still have a pretty bad relationship, but like I appreciate more like what the motherly figure does, and it's like then add on entrepreneurship. As I said, it's like yeah, I could only imagine how difficult it was to manage both and manage all the other things that you had juggling as well.
Hmm.
So to now get into like the image consulting, you said you started going like really all in on that, like this
Hmm.
year. So it's just like
Yeah.
pretty recently, but like I mean, I've been keeping up with you since we met a couple months back, and it's like I see your IG, and it's like featured in this, hopped on this podcast, hopped on that podcast, and you're just like killing the game right now. So it's like how has everything been since the transition from the dating, pulling the plug on that, and going all in on the image consulting?
Wait, you froze.
Mic check, mic check, mic check.
Okay. All right. You're good now.
All right,
You were frozen.
no
Okay.
worries. I was saying, well, that's what I was saying. So I was saying, since you made the transition into going all in on the image consulting, like I mean, I've only been met you a couple months ago and been keeping up with you since, but it's like, all right, you appeared in this article, you appeared in this, thing, you hopped on that podcast and this podcast, and so from the outside looking in, I mean, it looks like things are going pretty well. And you mentioned earlier that once you transition from the dating coach to the image consulting, like how
Mhm.
things felt like you were going like a lot more downhill, like in a good way. Like it felt a lot less effortless because you were doing something where it said you felt like called to, you felt like your passion was pulling you towards. So how has
Yeah.
everything been since the transition, and how has rebranding been, especially as an image consultant? Because like, I mean, when you have a rebrand, like now you have to train people. Like some people still talk to me like, "Hey, John, you still selling real estate?" And it's like, no, it's been like 2 years since I try to actively do real estate. And so
Yeah.
now we got to now retrain people to think of you differently now. Like, hey, don't
Mhm.
come for me to dating coaching anymore. I don't do that, and come for me to image consulting. So how was
Yeah.
the rebrand process? How were you able to get people from who knew you from back then to get on board with what you have going on, and get new people, explain to them clearly what you do? Because like, hey, I heard you do this and that and this and that.
Yeah, so the messaging was really confusing. So everything really started last year, October
Okay.
2023. I went to an event called Build Your Brand Live in Dallas, Texas. And this was Jen Gottlieb, Chris Winfield. Um, Something was calling me. I don't know. I went. I didn't know anybody. I didn't know what it was about. And I went. And because I went to that event, because I was open to possibilities, because I went and started putting myself in the rooms with people that were more successful than me, this like-minded people.
Mm-hmm.
As an entrepreneur, it can be very lonely. You can be that lone wolf type of work. It's really easy to get behind the computer and just do and forget about that there's so many people out there that can help you with ideas or just being around like-minded people, especially as a creative. And I joined their mastermind. It was my first mastermind I ever joined. And it was 25K. And I was like, oh, like I just didn't have the money. And I was like, but I literally called my mom during break crying because I knew that this is where I needed to go. Didn't know how I was going to pay. I think I put it on like 4 credit cards. Not going to lie. Can you divvy this up 4 times? But, but I did it. I decided at that moment, from that moment forward, and it was before I decided to kill her, right? But it was that moment that things changed for me because I put pushed myself. Now, after, like, I would say August of this year, so not too long, that
Mm,
is when I really was crystal clear. That's when I said I'm going all in. And
yeah.
I really did. And I went all in. I created a new podcast. The rebrand was a little difficult because I did have people fall off because they followed me for, relationship
Dating and other
advice and
stuff.
dating. And that's a natural progression. But I think for me, it's like, okay, what is my message now? And who is my avatar? And what was really natural to me, where I was at, I'm an entrepreneur. I know I saw the struggles through these masterminds and the events where people were showing up, and I was like, "Whoa, you're the expert in your field, but woo, you're not really showing up as an
As the
expert."
expert in your field, yeah.
Like, it's hard for me to see that and like approach someone and be like, so they have to
Yeah.
watch me by example, because I think that's truly like stories sell. Like seeing me go through the process, I think people are like, oh, that's what she does. Okay, so she helps with your colors, your style, and deliver your message on your outer appearance so that before you open your mouth, you're delivering a message, and that when you
Yeah.
when you actually do open your mouth and tell people what you do, it lands even deeper. And
Mm,
so what makes you stand out in a million people full of, like, when you were in real estate, there's a
yeah.
10 million realtors. Like, what's going to make you stand out? Well, one, being authentic, and two, speaking to the audience, who's your avatar, making sure you're dialed in, and like showing up as your best self, because
Yeah.
people judge us in less than 3 seconds, and it's
100%.
powerful. So, as getting back to your question though, the rebrand was a little difficult, but once it took a couple months to really show my audience like who I was,
Yeah.
and I got positive responses. I actually, oh my God, Celeste, like Lemore, she's like, Celeste, yes, that's exactly, well, Lemore, like, that's
Yeah.
exactly where you should be. This is,
Yeah.
people were responding like, oh yes, look at you shine. Yes, you're so much more in your element. And I think people see more than you actually know that they're seeing. They're paying attention. And
Yeah.
so when they see that you're not truly coming through for whatever reason in your messaging, in your video, like they can see you're there, but they don't see the passion.
Yeah.
And then
No,
when they do see
100%.
it, there's a difference.
You could feel it. It's
Mm-hmm.
hard to. That's like feeling about that. It's like in the future, ideally, I want to do an in-person podcast. You could have the same conversation now that we're having and have it in person, and it's just something different. It adds a little something to
Mm-hmm.
it. Like you could feel the conversation. So like you mentioned a lot of good points. I'm trying to hit all of them from the best I can remember. The first big point that you mentioned about when you were doing the rebrand, it's people were
Mm-hmm.
dropping off, but like you have
Yeah.
to push through because sometimes how do you grow a tree? You have to prune it so it's the branches, right? And sometimes it hurts, it sucks. How does a phoenix, get reborn? It burns from, comes from, rises from the ashes, but it has to
Mm-hmm.
burn first. And so a lot of times when you're doing this rebrand and stuff like that, you're going through a big change. For anyone listening, like you have to go through a period where it might suck a little bit. So that was the first good point. The second point that I'm curious to talk about is you have to be a certain type of crazy to go spend 25,000 first investment. And like it's I'm that type of crazy too, because it's like there's been a lot of times where I've been putting stuff on my card. It's like, damn, I don't got it, but after I'll figure the rest out later. Um,
Yeah.
and that's where I feel like you get into like real entrepreneurship, I guess you could say, because I mean a lot of people treat their business almost like a what's the word I'm looking for? Not a solopreneur. It's like the four quadrants of business. Self-employed person. There we go.
Mm.
They're just self-employed, or they're a freelancer, which is cool. You can
Yeah.
make money doing what you do, or like what you mentioned earlier, or they treat it like a trade, right? We just get paid for what you do. But like to treat it as like a business, and like that takes a whole nother set of skills to grow a business. Because it's like there's a creative aspect to it where there's like your product or service that you're selling, and then there's all the ops, the marketing, the sales, all the rest of the stuff that comes alongside with it. So what was it like making that investment? What like led up to, hey, this is my first one. I'm just gonna go 25K instead of just, you could have joined like a 6K mastermind or a 5K mastermind or even like a 1K mastermind or something like that. So what led to you just making that massive jump kind of off the
Mm-hmm.
rip?
I saw what I didn't know already, but I felt that this was the right tool for me. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
for me, felt the power of being in the rooms with people that were successful. And
Yeah.
that's really, there's no price tag on that. If you can actually get into those masterminds like Lewis Howes and Jim Quick and all the people that they were once me, they were once in
Yeah.
that first mastermind, surrounding themselves, and all those people became who they're supposed to be. They all blew up. They all had each other. There's such power in um, being around
Proximity.
minds, the ideas that came out of this. Oh, you should do this, or what do you think about this? And it's like, oh my god, the brain energy is so exciting because you get to use all these people's brains in a sense. We all
Yeah.
help each other. We all see things that I couldn't see in my business, or I couldn't see the things for me. So I don't know. I didn't think about it like, maybe I should find one for 6K or 10K. It was just like in the moment, and I felt that
Mm-hmm.
it was the right thing, even though it was scary. I'm not gonna lie. I was
Yeah.
crying. That was scary. But I leapt. And because of that, and my old podcast, which no ROI came out of it then, but I was on a woman that was on my show last year, and she's
Yeah.
huge. And now I only do in-person podcasting when I do
Yeah.
my shows with guests because there's such power in them. But okay. And today, right before I saw you, because of that podcast, I got a new client today. So
No
it's
way.
like the ROI, sometimes you don't know, but it's happening. And,
Yeah.
so
No,
it's
100%.
just, yeah.
Yeah, you mentioned a couple of good points there that like right, it's the meeting of the minds, right? Whenever two people meet, the third mind, it's the Think and Grow Rich talks about it,
Hmm.
the mastermind principle, and then getting in front of people who just to bounce ideas off and I think soundboarding just helps you get a lot of clarity. And sometimes you don't get answers, but like you just need to hear your thoughts. Sometimes speaking it out to someone else. It's like in your head, it sounds like a great idea, and then you speak it out to someone. It's like, maybe this idea kind of sucks. Let me not do this, or let me do this instead, or tweak this a little bit. And then from there, so you ended up joining the mastermind. You mentioned what it
Yeah.
was. You said October of last year, or was it
Yeah.
earlier this year? October of last year.
October last year.
Jeez, so it's been a little over a full year since you joined the mastermind. And then when did you start to see like the traction start to really pick up with the image consulting? I think you said as well it took you about like 3 months to get like the messaging down packed. So like when did you get the momentum,
So
everything?
May of this year is when I killed the coach. And
Yeah.
then I came up with a new messaging. I was definitive by July.
Okay.
I had my first client from the mastermind. Maybe it was that month, June or July. I
Mm-hmm.
started my VIP days in New York. I work with a celebrity designer. I was like, I don't know how it's going to happen. I just know that I'm putting this together. And I
Yeah.
just started from then. And then I got a couple clients. And then I didn't have any for like a month or two. And I was like, oh shit, like panic. Right. But like just in the last, I'll tell you what has really catapulted this in the last. I hired a videographer for wherever I go, for whatever I do now, all the BTS, whether it's a live pod or in
Mhm.
studio podcast, whether it's Fashion Week. So I started hiring a couple for Fashion Week, and then it was my first big speaking event, and then it was, it just started, and it's like when I invested that time and that money for someone to really present myself the way I want to be presented to my audience, things
Mhm.
started to like the credibility started to build more, the trust started to build more because people want to see, they want to see before they buy. And it's
Mhm.
like everybody says it's 8 to 11 touches, which it is, but there's nothing that moves a needle faster than getting actually in a room with someone
Mhm.
and or like seeing the behind the scenes, see the story. It's you're a speaker as well. It's the
Yeah.
stories that sell.
Yeah, no, 100%. That's what you mentioned earlier that I completely forgot to touch on about the preview, right? People, but I think you mentioned people are making split-second judgments within 3 seconds, right? And
Hmm.
sometimes they're writing you off before you even get to open your mouth. And so a lot of time, doesn't matter how smart you are, how well spoken you are, you might be already be written off before you even get to that stage, before you even get to that room, because of how you show up. And
Hmm.
so like that's something I wanted to mention earlier. And so now we're on the topic of that. One of my this story I shared with a guy I interviewed a couple hours ago. How my friend, my girlfriend now, but she was like, "John, you can't keep having people on the podcast if their camera quality looks better than yours." Now, at the time, I was using a $50 webcam. It was 1080p. Got the job done. That's all I needed, right? I'm a guy. I just need something to record, and that's it, right? She was like, "No, John, you gotta have something." And it's like, um, after that, I invested in this camera, and it's just like that was the best investment ever. And this is technically like a beginner camera, but like it cost me like maybe like $1,100 for like the camera, the lens, and everything. And it was just like it was a lot of money. And she ended up spotting me. I paid her back later on, but like it made such a difference. It's like now you hop on to a podcast or I have a guest on, and it's like, oh John, like you look so clear. And it's like, thank you. Thank you very much. I made the investment in my camera quality because, like, as you said, people will see you and write you off and make judgments long before they ever get to actually meet you and know you. So, back to what you were saying about investing in yourself and not getting content too. I think a lot of people don't understand like the value of content creation and paying for a videographer. That was my first hire as well. I have a video editor, so like now I don't have to edit my content, right? I just have to send him this stuff, and then he makes everything looks even nicer than it already is. And it's like, as you were saying, like people are making judgment, and so it's like it'll be wise to invest in your appearance and how you appear online and in person so that before people can ever see you, that perceived authority is already like through the roof. And so I had a question that I'm genuinely curious about because I don't really understand your world that much, right? So like what exactly is, and this might sound a little like naive, maybe a dumb question, but I'm genuinely curious, like what is like image consulting?
Okay. First, there's no dumb questions.
Yeah.
Number two, I'm gonna give you stats really fast before I answer that.
Yeah.
Okay, so 55% is the way that we look. 38% is our tone or the way that we speak, and 7% is actually what we say. So keep that in mind. Those are proven
Yeah.
stats by scientists for years and years and years. So, an image consultant is it's we're trained and certified, and we constantly keep up with CEUs, our accreditations. So we have to constantly be educating. The difference in like a stylist, right, is stylists put together based on either what's trending, what's in the stores, or a particular look. Say, I want to make you look like Mickey Mouse. Okay, so I'm going to dress you in ears and a red, and it might not work for you, but there's like an image or a thought behind it. We're
Mm-hmm.
image consultants, we're trained in color analysis, style analysis, what's the best clothing for your body type, how to create a proportion, like where you're proportionate, to not have any distractions. What's your job? What's your profession? How can we create your authentic self, but wear maybe certain colors for that meeting so that you land the deal.
Mm-hmm.
We also are trained in etiquette, business etiquette, dining etiquette, dating etiquette. We how we present ourselves to the world. It's not just about your clothing or the colors. It's your mannerisms. It's the way you do business, right? So it's the holistic approach to your whole image. So it could be like we talk about grooming, how much cologne to wear, how much not to wear, makeup, all the things that maybe seems mindless or pointless, but really dialing in, and we master that, which is you. You're a masterpiece, but we help
Yeah.
discover who you are, and we create the masterpiece for you.
Okay. And then my follow up question to that would be like, you see, especially in the entrepreneurship space, there's like some people who are super dressed down. I'm talking like blazer, steamed, fresh steamed shirt and tie, all that stuff, the whole 9 yards. Some people wearing 3-piece suits. And then you see like another large group of entrepreneurship where it's like hoodies and sweatpants and stuff like that. All very successful in their own fields and doing their thing. So like, what's kind of like your thoughts on that? Like one big example, right? Alex Hermosi, right? He's probably like the biggest
Oh,
example.
stop it.
Tank top, jean shorts, and Crocs, right? And so like, what are your thoughts on everything? Is this like, is there too professional? Is there too casual? Is there like a happy medium? Like, what's your kind of thoughts on that?
Yes, there's too professional, and yes, there's too casual. You want to dress one level up from your audience. You always want to have one level up, and I don't mean like you're in a three-piece suit and the guy is in a hoodie and sweatshirt. That doesn't make sense. Think about Grant Cardone did this when he was interviewing Kevin Hart, right? It's called mirroring. So Grant's usually in suits and doing his thing, and Kevin's usually in a hoodie, and so he was interviewing him, and he decided, I think Grant wore like a mock turtleneck,
Mm,
and that was dressed down for him, where he's not going to put on a hoodie. That looks ridiculous. That's not who he is. But he was able to relate to Kevin more. So
mm,
if you're in the field of IT, or you're in the field of like you're in construction, I don't know, maybe you're a manager, like think about who your audience is. Dress one level up. But now think about Alex Hermosi, first of all, should never be dressing like that, but he chooses to, but he can because he's made it. Now
mm,
I'm talking to people that are wanting to elevate their image so that they can be more successful. They can be taken seriously as an expert in their field. And I think until you get to the place that you need and want to be, by still truly being who you are, you're just elevated yourself, right? But if at the end of the day, John, you're like, okay, I'm a billionaire. I'm good. I can wear whatever the fuck I want to wear. And that's your prerogative. But I think I'm talking to a very specific person, someone that's
mm,
ready to like move up the ladder. And so to be taken seriously, to have that trust built, you have to level up. You need to become polished. You need to look professional, the part. And I will take that to the grave because it has
yeah.
worked every time. It's not only worked for my audience, but it's worked for myself. It has
Mm,
put the confidence in myself that I maybe needed, that I lacked before. Or it's just giving me that extra, like, put on a suit jacket. I'm like, I feel like I'm ready to do my thing, like
yeah.
I'm like boss pants. So
Yeah, no, 100%. You get dressed up and you something about it puts a little pep in your step. You poke your chest out a little more, your chin, and
yeah.
it's held a little higher. Now, I feel you 100%. I have another question. I'm curious to hear your answer on, especially as an image consultant. Like, what's your thought on the quote? fake it till you make it, because you hear that all the time. So especially
Mm,
as an image consultant, where it's like a lot of appearance nowadays, especially in the Western world, is like, is enhanced or prosthetic or something like that. And so it's like, and
mhm.
not to make it a whole entire different conversation, but like you get the point I'm trying to make. A lot of appearance people are trying to appear as something that they're not, and cover up stuff and hide stuff, and try to be someone that they're not, instead of, as you said, figuring out what works the best for them and making themselves, just amplifying who they are, not completely changing who they are. So what's your thought on that quote?
So I know there's a lot of negativity surrounding that. Like you should always be real. Yes, 1,000% you should be authentic. But I think you should dress the part that you want in life. I think that the more that you put yourself in that, think about who you are in a couple years, even in 1 year. Who do you want to
Mhm.
be? Like how do you want to be in this world? I want you to start dressing like that, because the faster you are, the faster the universe gives it to you. And
Mhm.
it has happened to me. If I didn't dress, if I didn't spend money on my custom suits and create these pieces strategically for each audience, for me, for really elevating myself, how's anybody going to hire me and say, she's an image consultant? I don't really
Yeah.
like, I'm not really like, I don't know if I trust her. You have to show up as the person that you want to be.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying if you want to be a billionaire, you should start like, renting a Maybach or something. I mean, you can, but I don't think that's the smartest way that you should invest in your money right away.
Yeah.
But, I think that there's something to be said about living how you want to live really soon,
Mhm.
like dressing the part before you
Embodying
get it.
that, yeah, embodying
Yeah.
that future self. And it's not
Hmm.
showing up as someone that you're not. It's more so like, hey, I'm preparing myself for what's to come and acting as if it's already here. Like I'm already am that
Exactly.
person. It's just that, life has it's a weird trick where like it's usually a lot more delayed, right? You start appearing in one way, but like life tends to have a habit of they don't have express shipping, right? We usually have to take a couple, a little while for our entrepreneurial success to come alongside. But no, I agree with you 100%. So I mean, I feel like I could keep talking to you forever. Both you and your mom were great conversation. I had a dope time talking to your mom too on the podcast.
Yeah.
So, Celeste, where can
So
we
good.
find you specifically? Where can we connect with you if we want to, upgrade our image, or if we just want to, follow along for the journey? You said you post a lot of behind the scenes stuff. You're doing Fashion Week. You're traveling. So, like, where can we keep up with all things Celeste?
Yeah. You can find me mostly on Instagram, Celeste Moore Image. You can jump over to my podcast on YouTube. It's called More Style, Moore, like my last name. And LinkedIn, Celeste Moore. Just I throw a ton of content on there. I just want people to be educated, to learn. Really, that's my mission, is to help people. And whether you work with me one on one, you'll get some value listening or following me. Yeah.
All right, and now it's time for our famous 5 questions. Question number one is, what is the most impactful lesson you learned in life?
Oof, that's a rough. I think the most. I think this base is like defines my life is perseverance. Like never give up, because the moment you like, we all have doubts, but giving up is just, that's like complete failure. I don't believe in failure. I believe it's a lesson to learn. But when you persevere, that's been my life goal. Yeah,
What is
and
the
lesson.
most what is the most admirable trait a person can have?
I know this is overplayed, but authenticity.
If you had to change someone's life but only had one book, which would you recommend?
Mm. The Four Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz.
What is the legacy you're working on leaving behind?
Because I created a nonprofit and I have such a passion at this, as like, it's called Confidence with Styles for Young Girls. I want to help people define who they are at a younger age so that they can really navigate crazy world of life that we live in with a little extra armor.
And for anyone that wants to embark on their walk to wealth, what is the very first step you recommend they take?
Get in the rooms with people more successful than you.
Alrighty, so I had a great time having you on. Looking forward to staying in touch. Looking forward to seeing you in a couple weeks. Looking forward to seeing
Yes.
you in Miami, and probably Austin too. So I'm looking forward to staying in touch and keeping, helping each other grow and build as we both, are in this entrepreneur journey together. And as I said, I had an amazing time, and definitely gonna have to bring you on next year as well. So we might have to do
Awesome.
something in person, whether it's in Miami Speaker School or Austin Speaker School. Do something in person. I'll bring my camera and stuff.
Love it. Yes, let's do it. Thanks for having me on.